Damn, Tails! Mine. Wait. What? Hello everyone and welcome back. My name's Argonaut, and today as a part of my Sonic Marathon, we're going to be taking a look back at Sonic Mania, Sega's second attempt at making a sequel to the classic trilogy, including its development history, story, and gameplay, as well as my thoughts on it. But, before all of that, if you like this video and want to see more like it, then feel free to click that subscribe button to keep up with me. I'd really appreciate it. And now, with all of that shameless promotion out of the way, on with the video. First of all, the funny thing about Sonic Mania is that it actually wasn't developed by Sonic Team at all. That's right, during the time period while Sonic Mania was in development, Sonic Team was hard at work on Sonic Forces. No, for this game, it had a different type of team developing it. Do you remember Christian Whitehead? I mentioned him in my Sonic CD videos, the guy that basically remastered Sonic CD with his own retro engine. Well, back in 2015, it turns out he started creating his own original Sonic game. And, after showing it to Sonic series producer Takashi Iizuka, it would eventually go on to get greenlit by Sega as a full project, bringing in another independent studio, Headcanon, as well as Pagoda West Games to work on it. Sonic Mania is basically a fan project that Sega officially acknowledges. Now, Sega didn't actually believe it would do that great, but using Christian Whitehead's retro engine, it seemed like a low-risk, high-reward game to them that would appeal to those niche hardcore fans out there. And it would release in time for Sonic's 25th anniversary. And so, on August 15th of 2017, after 2 years in development, Sonic Mania was released for the PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. Okay, first off, I can't believe this game is almost 10 years old. It feels like it just came out like, what, 3 years ago? But the first time I played Sonic Mania was back when it came out. The game was like $20, and being a big Sonic fan, of course I bought it on launch day, but I could never seem to get very far in it. And then I believe I ultimately ended up putting it down to play Sonic Forces when that game came out in November of the same year, telling myself that I'd eventually go back to Mania one day, even getting the Encore DLC when it came out almost a year later. And over the years, I would try multiple times to get through Mania. I must have had 5 or 6 different save files where I started and just stopped. And all you ever hear people say about Sonic Mania is just how amazing it was and how it's the best classic Sonic experience. So, now that I'm doing this Sonic Marathon, it's finally time for me to actually finish the game and see for myself. Is Sonic Mania the ultimate classic Sonic experience? For the story of Sonic Mania, it takes place after the events of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Guess we're just pretending Sonic 4 doesn't exist anymore. But in this game, Sonic and Tails pick up on an energy signature from Angel Island that isn't from the Chaos Emeralds, and they head there to check it out just in time to see Robotnik's new robot group, the Hard-Boiled Heavies, excavating what's giving off the energy signature, the Phantom Ruby, a magical MacGuffin that does whatever the plot needs it to do. In this case, it immediately gives the Hard-Boiled Heavies free will and transports Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, who is sleeping close by, through time and space. And, with their newly acquired free will, the Heavies decide to steal the Phantom Ruby for themselves. And now, Sonic has to stop both the Heavies and Robotnik while being constantly transported through time and space. For Sonic Mania, I actually played through it as Sonic this time, since Amy isn't a thing in this game. And, for the gameplay of Sonic Mania, it's pretty much got the same feel as Sonic 3, and Sonic has all the same moves. He can run, jump, and spin dash. Although, this time they were actually able to give Sonic a new move, the drop dash. It works similar to the spin dash, except you can charge it up while in the air after a jump, instead of having to charge it up while at a standstill, which actually helps keep the pacing up for the game, since you can keep on moving while doing it. Now, I gotta say, this move actually does feel in line with classic Sonic. And, you wanna know why? Because it is. Apparently, the drop dash ability actually was originally put in prototype versions of Sonic 3, but it was most likely ultimately scrapped in exchange for the Insta-Shield ability. And, speaking of which, the Insta-Shield ability actually makes its return in this game as well. That's right, the Insta-Shield ability from Sonic 3 also makes a comeback in this game. Along with the Insta-Shield, you can also choose to use his Super Peel-Out from Sonic CD. Although, personally, I found his Super Peel-Out move to be slower than the one from Sonic CD, so I mainly went with his Sonic 3 abilities. But even then, every time I'd start up the game, it constantly switched me back to the Sonic Mania abilities with the drop dash. So, after a point, I just stopped bothering with it. And as for the drop dash itself, personally, I found it to be an okay move. It does fit in line with Sonic's abilities more than Insta-Shield does, but I couldn't really find too many great times to use it, unless I was replaying a stage that I already knew, searching for the Chaos Emeralds. But, along with Sonic's new abilities, all the elemental shields from Sonic 3 also make their return. I swear, the devs of this game clearly used Sonic 3 heavily as an inspiration for this one. And, for the level design of Mania, it brings back a lot of the levels from past Sonic games. Green Hill Zone, as if we haven't seen enough of that one, Chemical Plant, Hydro City, because we needed more than one water level, even Stardust Speedway from Sonic CD, and more. And it doesn't just bring these zones back, but it also puts its own spin on them. And these levels are huge. If it's your first time playing Sonic Mania, I really advise you to turn off the time limits. Oh, by the way, I never explained this in my prior Sonic videos, but if you ever hit 10 minutes in a classic Sonic game, you die, lose a life, and have to go back to your last save point. But there were multiple times where I was cutting it close with some of these levels, finishing in about 9.5 minutes or so. These levels were bigger than the ones from Sonic 3, which already had huge levels. Not to mention, there are so many different paths to take in each level. Unless you know what you're doing, no two playthroughs of a level will feel the same, which offers a ton of replayability for an already huge game. The Chaos Emeralds are once again returning in Mania, and, just like Sonic 3, you get a chance at a Chaos Emerald by finding a giant ring which is hidden somewhere in the level. Doing this will teleport you to the Special Zone. And the Special Zone this time seems to be clearly based off of the ones from Sonic CD, where you have to run around an obstacle course chasing a UFO, where the amount of rings you have also serve as your time limit. There are bombs and other obstacles that you can run into, and if you run into any obstacles, you lose 10 rings, and once you run out of rings, you're out. Or, if you fall off the map, you're also out. Also, as you're going through the special stages, you'll see these blue orbs. If you collect enough of them, you unlock Mach 2, which lets Sonic go faster but become a little bit harder to control. Keep going from that, and you'll unlock his Mach 3, which makes him go even faster and even harder to control. I actually like the special stages in this game. As you're going through, you have to think to yourself, do you want to grab blue orbs and unlock a faster speed? Or do you want to grab rings to keep yourself in the Special Zone? And I have to say, these were by far the hardest classic Sonic special stages to me. For the first time ever, I actually wasn't able to get all the Chaos Emeralds before the end of the game. I got stuck on the 5th one, and no matter how many attempts I made, I just couldn't get it. And for the people out there saying, it's a skill issue, I was able to get them all on the first try. Well, congrats to you. And go f*** yourself. These were challenging. But once you get all the Chaos Emeralds, you of course unlock Super Sonic, and you know what that means. Get 50 rings and look at him go! You get super speed and invulnerability, and as long as you don't run out of rings, or fall off a cliff, or get crushed, you're fine. Now, for the bosses of the game. These were probably some of the most creative and challenging boss fights of the classic Sonic games. Just like Sonic 3, you have to fight a boss at the end of every act. Some are even repeats of the fight from the game that they were originally from, like Racing Metal Sonic and Stardust Speedway, for example. But also, there's usually a twist to these boss fights. Using Metal Sonic as an example again, you go from racing him like this, to fighting him like this. And also for this game, just like in the old days, it uses the life system. So, once you run out of lives, you get punished. Not by getting sent back to the beginning of the game like in the old days, thank goodness. but by getting sent back to Act 1 of whatever zone you're in. So, even if you lose all your lives to the Act 2 boss, it's back to the beginning of Act 1 for you. Now, as someone that grew up with games like this coming from the NES days, I wish that they'd at least start you from the beginning of the act that you lost at, because, again, these stages are huge. You lose roughly about 15 to 20 minutes of progress whenever this happens. And now, hear me out. Lives are an antiquated system in place, so you spend more time on a game. But in Sonic Mania's case, it's already a big game. Like, compare Sonic Mania to Sonic 1, where you can run through the whole game in roughly 30 minutes. And I'm not saying they should get rid of lives completely like how Sonic Origins did, since they're after the feel of the original games, but at the very least, I think starting over from the beginning of the act you lost at would be a better decision. All that being said, if you couldn't tell by now, I game over it a couple times, hence the title of this video, namely against the boss in Hydro City Act 2. I kept losing lives from running out of air, or getting unfairly stuck on some of the platforms, and with this specific boss, if you get hit, you have no chance to pick up any rings. But okay, moving on with the story, after beating Robotnik while he's using the Phantom Ruby to power himself up to attack you, if you collected all the Chaos Emeralds, the Heavy King will steal it from him at that moment to power himself up, causing Robotnik to go after him to try to take it back, and Sonic will go Super to stop both of them from getting it. Now, this was a pretty unique Super Sonic fight. It basically has you flying around taking turns fighting off both of them while they steal the Phantom Ruby from each other. Although, I've never seen a Supersonic stage where you could land on the ground. They're usually in space or high up in the sky or over the ocean or something. But anyways, after you defeat Robotnik and the Phantom King, the Phantom Ruby uses the power of the Chaos Emeralds and opens up a portal, sending Sonic and the Phantom Ruby to another dimension, where this Sonic goes on to end up in Sonic Forces. That's right, if you didn't know, the classic Sonic that we see in Sonic Forces is the same one from Sonic Mania. Which, honestly, execution aside, I thought that this was actually a really cool concept. But, now that I'm done talking about the gameplay, let's move on to how the game did after it released. After Sonic Mania released, it sold over 1 million copies in 8 months, appealing not just to niche fans that only like the classic Sonic games like how Sega thought, but having more of a massive appeal to everyone, becoming the best rated Sonic game for the past 15 years. The game did so well, there was even a DLC released for it roughly a year later called Sonic Mania Plus Edition, which added Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel to the game, and they haven't been in a game since Knuckles Chaotix back in 1995. Although I did notice, though, that they didn't add aiming to the game for some reason. I'm not salty. You are salty! But the Plus Edition also even added an Encore mode, which has a new story to the game which follows Sonic's adventures after coming back from Forces. And, ever since Mania, the drop dash ability has pretty much been in every classic Sonic game ever since. Although, again, I think this lines up with Sonic's moveset more than the Insta-Shield, and I understand why they went this way. I wish we'd see the Insta-Shield get this treatment instead, since it was an easy-to-use but hard-to-master skill. Now, while Sega did get the message that people were still interested in classic Sonic, unfortunately, even though it had pretty much nothing but positive feedback, Sega ultimately decided not to make a sequel to Sonic Mania, instead choosing to go a 2.5D route, which would eventually lead to the creation of Sonic Superstars. Which, I can understand their thoughts going that route, but I personally think they should have at least made 1 or 2 more of these before deciding to go that way. They were cheap to make, and you had people that loved the franchise making them to the point where it felt like one of the classics ripped straight out of the 90s. But, hey, Christian Whitehead, along with some of the other devs that worked on Sonic Mania, ended up using his retro engine once again to create Sonic Origins a few years later, and finally made classic Amy playable in a classic Sonic game. But, with that being said, let's move on to my thoughts about Sonic Mania. Sonic Mania was a great game that captured the spirit of the original trilogy, but I personally don't think it was without its flaws. As somebody that's playing this hot off of the heels of the original trilogy, here's what I didn't like about the game. First off, I think its silent storytelling wasn't as good as the originals. Without looking it up, I couldn't tell some of the things that were happening, like the hard-boiled heavies being granted free will from the Phantom Ruby, for example. I actually think that Sonic Mania also does overstay its welcome a little bit, and that the game runs on for a bit too long. That's probably why I tried and stopped playing it so many times. While I think Classic Sonic is a lot of fun, I also think that after about 3 or 4 hours, you start to get kinda tired of them. Honestly, with how much content is in this game, they probably could have split it up into 2 games. But, hey, maybe the devs knew that it'd be a long shot for them to get a sequel and put their all into this game. I also felt like this wasn't one of the better Super Sonic levels at the end. I don't know why they included the ground in the level. Personally, I think they should have kept everything the same, but instead, make it a chase, similar to how Sonic 3 was. And every time you hit Robotnik or the Phantom King, you then have to fight the next one in turn as they try to take the Phantom Ruby from each other. And also, personally, I'm just not a fan of Super Sonic levels where they sporadically drop rings on you from out of the sky. I'd rather them lay out a trail that you can choose to go for, kinda like Sonic 3. With how it is in this state, I think I actually prefer the Super Sonic fight from Sonic Superstars over the one in Mania. With all that being said though, I think Sonic Mania is an amazing game. It's easily the best classic Sonic experience that captures the spirit of the original games and what made them so fun. If there's anyone out there that's a Sonic fan and hasn't played it yet, what are you waiting for? Chances are, the game is probably like $10 on sale somewhere, and it's packed with references and cameos, and it is clearly the developer's love letter to the franchise. In conclusion, Sonic Mania came at a time when Sega had spent the last few years playing it safe. After the failure of Sonic 06, the mixed reviews of Sonic Unleashed, and the failure of Sonic the Hedgehog 4, they really needed to start taking some chances again. And them taking one with Sonic Mania was definitely the right call. Although, unfortunately, it got a little bit dampened with Sonic Forces. But, again, can you imagine how well their strategy here would have worked if Sonic Forces were as good a modern game as Mania was a classic one? But those are my thoughts on Sonic Mania. Did you agree with me? Did you disagree? What did you think about Sonic Mania? Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear from you. And, with that being said, next up in the Sonic Marathon, we're going to be taking a look back at Sonic the Hedgehog 4, Sega's original failed attempt at making a sequel to the classic trilogy. I hope to see you there. And, until then, I'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for watching.